Every day, you and I get bombarded with negative news. And just like our bodies becomes what we eat, our minds become the information that we consume. If you want to stay positive, it's so important that you also listen to stories that inspires you and uplifts you. In this podcast, we interview world-leading experts dedicated to solving the world's most pressing problems. And if you stick around, I promise you will not only be as informed as if you watch the news, you will feel uplifted, inspired, and have more positive energy in your life. Welcome to Great.com Talks with. Hi and welcome. Today Great.com talks with Vance Martin, who is the president of Wild.org. And if you haven't heard of them before, they're an organization that is protecting and restoring Earth's wild nature. And if you're new here into this podcast, you definitely want to press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because today we're going to talk about how we can protect our wild environments. And we're going to talk about Wild's mission to protect and restore at least half of Earth's wild nature. And I'm really curious to get to know them better and understand what the plan is to accomplish this. Vance, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with Great today. I very much appreciate it.
Great pleasure. Nice to be here. Thank you.
So to begin with, how would you describe Wild to someone that is not familiar with the work that you do or even the challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, well, I'll say very specifically, we're a nonprofit organization based in America, nonprofit tax laws, but we work worldwide. And I need to say that for the business community, please, I want you to be aware that that those of us in the nonprofit world who are responsible, results-driven executives and staff, the nonprofit world needs to have a product, needs to be a business, it needs to have a product, it needs to be able to sell that product. It just so happens that any profits, quote, that yield from those efforts go back to the work. They don't go to shareholders and people other than staff or projects. So though we're a nonprofit organization, I like to say we're a nonprofit business.
I very much enjoy that perspective. Great.com is a bit similar. We are a for-profit company that gives away all of the profits. So I guess it's a similar mindset. And I do appreciate to hear a nonprofit that is thinking like a business, because if you only act with a heart, it's hard to maximize the impact. So you work worldwide. I saw the map on your website. It seems like you're involved in a lot of countries all over the world. So what are you doing there then? What kind of projects are you involved with to help nature?
Yeah, well, we have an overarching vision called Nature Needs Have. It's a bit of a marketing term, of course. You have to communicate to people. It wouldn't be very successful if I said our campaign is based on the best biodiversity science, which says that in certain ecosystems, if they get too small, they can't produce the ecological services that support life on Earth. I mean, that's not only a bit boring, but it's like, hello, what is that? Essentially, that's what Nature Needs Have is. It's based on the very best modern science and the very best traditional knowledge from indigenous communities around the world. On the science side, it says Earth is where we come from. Earth is what supports us. It produces life support, air, water, soil, biodiversity, you name it. There's many, these are all produced by wild nature. And the science is clear, is if those areas, sea and land, get too small, they can't produce enough life support, right? Interestingly, and what moves me personally is that traditional knowledge around the world, and Wild is 40 some years old. We started in Africa, and one of our co-founders was a traditional leader, a very famous white conservationist and a traditional leader. The white conservationist was the older brother of Gary Player, the great golfer from a few decades ago. But his friend and mentor and brother was a Zulu chief. So we have always, as a conservation organization, worked very closely with and understood the traditional points of view as well as the modern science and policy points of view. We work with them all. Traditional knowledge, traditional life ways have a very core principle, and that is you live in reciprocity with Mother Earth.
Mm.
You respect your mother because she gives you life. Very simple. It's actually very scientific if you get down to it. So I like to say that nature needs have, based on the best modern science and very congruent, very true to the best traditional knowledge. So we work on that. It's an aspirational vision that takes policy, it takes science, it takes movement building, because no great achievements, lasting achievements in world history have been achieved without a popular movement. And so the science of movement building, the social science of it, is very important to us. So we do a variety of things, but essentially, besides protecting wildlife, saving wilderness areas, creating policy with national governments, we work with local communities on the ground to help them save their areas so that they get money and employment and natural resource benefits. We work with social influencers around the world on this Nature Needs Have vision. The campaign part of that is called the Survival Revolution, because we do feel that at this stage in our history, the way the climate is going, which is not good, the way that species loss is accelerating, which is really not good, and the way that viruses are jumping. These viral pandemics are directly related to the destruction of nature. And there's a lot of science on that. So we work with these three things with the goal of protecting or restoring, rewilding at least half of the Earth's lands and seas, interconnecting them as a sign of respect to Mother Earth. But hey, it's very self-serving. We are protecting human life as well.
Yeah, and I hope more and more people see the importance of that link. So just to reiterate what you said here, you want to make sure we protect half of the world's surfaces, because that way we can feel safe that Mother Earth is enough taken care of, and we can have a reciprocal relationship where we both give to Mother Earth by protecting her, and we receive as well. And it sounds like this is a movement that is working in different areas. You got a cultural movement where you try to change people's mindset, maybe back to a more indigenous perspective where people are respecting the nature and are not just absorbing resources. And you're also having a political movement in a sense that you're trying to protect certain areas. You're working together with indigenous people. So it sounds like you have a couple of hows for why you're doing things. And from your point of view, how far are we from achieving your why, which is to protect, and I know it's a marketing term, but protecting half of the Earth's surface is, and what do we need to do and change to get there?
Well, it's you know, there's international institutions that deal with setting policies, setting what are called protected area targets. The UN Convention on Biodiversity is the most active in that. They are informed by the activities of what's called the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, big intergovernmental NGO organization based in Switzerland, the largest conglomeration of conservation interest in the world. So they develop various policies, feed them into the Convention on Biodiversity. One of those policies deals with how much nature do human beings need to survive? Now, this is a question we never asked until a few years ago, because our mentality is nature is limitless. We just take, build, waste. start all over again. So it's a one-way. So we work, I in the World Commission on Protected Areas, which is part of this large organization. I founded and chair the Wilderness Specialist Group. And our role is to convince people through science, through policy, through local action, through movement building, that the most cost-effective way to address climate change, to stop biodiversity loss, and to avert terrible pandemics is to protect wild nature, because it's the most efficient way of drawing down carbon and storing it. It's the most effective way of having, lots of species. Lots of species is health. And it's the way of allowing those species to be to themselves and not having the exploitation of species through wildlife trade that leads to these awful pandemics, the result of which is an economic toll on the global economy like we have never seen before.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, hindsight is a very exact science, but imagine just investing the money this had cost us into protecting the environment instead. And it's interesting how all of these, the more organizations we interview here, the more we see how all of the problems we're having with our food production and agriculture and how we exploit nature, how they're all just connected with each other so much.
I'm glad you brought that up, because though we protect wilderness and all of that, you cannot reach the goals of a healthy planet, which means saving half of nature and land and sea, etc. You cannot reach that without completely renovating and revolutionizing how we grow our food, how we harvest from the sea, and how we pollute the sea and the air. Yeah, these are all related. So protecting wild nature is the gem. And I have to repeat that it is the most cost-effective way to deal with these, what we call existential challenges.
Mm.
I mean, humanity has been gambling for many years. And they're only interested in running the table. They're not interested in giving back like gate.com is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the gamble's running short now. All the information's very, very clear. And so it's time that we begin to understand that we need to go from pure gambling to building a new society and building the values that Great.com has, which is giving back.
Mm.
Fantastic. I love your guys' vision.
Well, thank you. So you're from the US, and we recently had a shift in administration in the US. Does that shift make you more hopeful that we will reach the goal?
Well, yes, of course it does. America itself is a deeply polarized nation. I think that's an awful situation, but the good thing about it is you can't heal something until you can see it.
Yeah.
And America has been very good at hiding things for a long time, not just America, but a lot of countries.
Mm.
Human nature, I don't want to deal with that. Isn't life grand? Well, the chickens are coming home to roost in America, and it's terrible. It's awful. But now we can see it. The current administration, incoming administration, is one of the most healing, compassionate, experienced at governance than any previous administration that has ever come in. So one can only be hopeful, and one must also be watchful, because the divisions, whether they're in America or the rising right wing around the world, or whether it's Brazil, there has been a swing towards policies that are not environmentally favorable and are not equity oriented. Maybe they say they are, but they're not. But then you have these wonderful things that happened just 2 weeks ago. The Leaders Pledge for Nature. You had major leaders of the G8, Trudeau, Merkel, Macron, making very big statements on understanding the link between a healthy environment, which includes wildness, and global prosperity and health.
Yeah, it gives hope to see there are leaders like that in a time where there are other more extreme perspectives happening at the same time. Yeah. So if you could look forward 10 years from now, what changes would you like us to see us have globally? And also, what would you like to accomplish within Wild?
Well, Wild's mission is very clear, that we'll continue to press for major ambition to protect and respect wild nature because of its obvious necessity for human health and prosperity. For the world itself, I have a very simple wish: that people drop the blinders from their eyes, and even if they're poor, if they're rich, a simple acknowledgement of thank you to the earth. Thank you for supporting us. And how can I help you? You've helped us. We are actually wild creatures. Our race, 2 million years in the wilderness. Our DNA is wild. We just happen to have developed a little bit of too much pride, perhaps, and we forget that. So my wish is that we remember our wildness, and that will engender a sense of respect for that which has nourished us since day one. And with that respect, you naturally want to do things that help that which has helped you.
That was real beautiful said. I particularly like the question of how may I help you?
Yeah.
For someone listening though that feels inspired to take some kind of action, I understand this question can lead to answer, I should do this. But do you have something action oriented a listener can do after hearing this interview that would move the world towards your vision?
Yes, indeed. Thank you for asking that. I mean, from a very simple way, go to natureneedshalf.org, sign the declaration. There's a thing called the Global Deal for Nature that we support. So that's on natureneedshalf.org. And that's for starters. And then very simply, ask yourself, what can I do instead of just preaching to other people? Okay, because we all know that sometimes that people go, oh yeah, you can do that, but I've got to feed a family and I've got to do this. Hey, every single thing we do, when you consider it, you can change it just a little bit in order to be respectful of the earth. And, I don't want to make too much of small things, but small things are important. The earth is moved by a collection of small things that aggregate and they synergize to being movements. And so changing your own lifestyle to the extent you can, a few less plane trips when we can travel again, a bit of recycling, a bit of just reaching out to your neighbors to say, how can I help you? Because what I've learned, and I've been in this business a long time, what I've learned is that we will not achieve true sustainability ecologically without respecting each other as people. It's part and parcel, the same package.
I really like how you bring in the ideas of compassion into a lot of the organizations I talk with, they're very solution oriented, and it's so important. But to bring in this aspect of compassion, I feel a warm feeling, and I'm inspired to take tiny actions, because it's like you said, it creates not only the action itself, it creates a mind shift in me that, yeah, it's gonna have a ripple effect. So thank you so much for that. We're coming towards the end of this interview, and Vance, this has been this has been such a mix between some kind of, I get a little bit of a Dalai Lama vibe from you, and at the same time, as it's a rational approach to making positive change. So I feel uplifted. Thank you so much for taking the time.
No, it's my great pleasure. We've just launched the Global Rewilding Alliance. I encourage people to look into that. We're a global movement that if you can't protect nature, you can certainly help restore it. And I encourage people to look into that as well. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time. And for you listening, if you enjoyed this interview as much as I did, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because that will show the algorithms that this is an important conversation, so more people can be infused with this empathically and practical approach to saving half of the world's wildlife. Nature need health, and we see you in the next episode. What is great.com? That is the most common question that we get. And the shortest answer I can give you is that we are a company that is moving money from the online casino industry and donates it to charities that is helping the environment. The long answer, unfortunately, I don't have time to tell you today. But if you're curious, definitely Google what is great.com to learn more.